You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Girl. This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gems in Comms series special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels. I am your host, Bemi Idowu, and today I'm really pleased to be speaking with Bemi Idowu, who is the founder of Talking Drum Communications, and they specialize in supporting companies innovating in Africa. Welcome, Bemi.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Glad to be here.
You are most welcome. We're happy to have you here. So just as a bit of a background, so this show literally is about spotlighting and sort of highlighting the people of color who are working in PR and comms, and those who are particularly trailblazing, throughout their careers. So this is kind of my kind of way of giving you your flowers and saying, well done for what you've done.
Thank you very much.
You are most welcome. I think it's really important that we take time to share lived experiences of trailblazers that are in the industry and those of color in particular, because we hear so much about statistics in the PR and how white the industry is. I think it's so important that we're actually able to tap into people and hear about their real stories. It's just such more relatable, and we spend our time doing storytelling, don't we? So this is what it's about, right? So starting with you, of course, tell us about yourself and exactly what you do.
So yes, my name is Bemi. So my full name is Bemi Idowu, but people call me Bemi because Bemi is quite a long name. People call me Bemi. So I'm the founder and managing director of Talking Drum Communications. And we basically work with technology companies, manufacturers, innovators, basically anyone that is innovating in Africa and helping them to deliver media campaigns that align with their business goals. I'm not going to go to like a new business kind of spiel, but the idea is literally to help our clients tell their innovation stories in a way that works for them. That's
brilliant. And it's great that you're doing it in Africa, because I feel like it's such an emerging market. So much going on there.
Yes.
To do that. It's brilliant. So in terms of the industry comms, what, attracted you to comms? Have you always wanted to work in comms, or what attracted you to the industry?
Have I always wanted to work in comms? No. Funny story. So what I actually wanted to do growing up, I wanted to be a TV presenter. I wanted to have a TV show.
Okay.
So context, my dad worked in TV. So I was born and raised in Nigeria. And my dad worked in TV in Nigeria. So I spent a lot of my childhood around TV stations and just been around. And then obviously going home and I watched a lot of TV growing up.
Yeah.
And the idea of hosting your own TV show and having your own guests and kind of talking them through, that really caught my attention. I felt like that was what I wanted to do. Either that or to become a sports journalist, because I love football.
Right.
I watch way too much football. It's like almost like it's my getaway in a way. Like it's like my decompression tool after I've had like a long day or like a long week. Just watch any football I can find. So I was either going to become a TV presenter or some kind of sports journalist. I was never athletically good enough to play football at any kind of serious level.
Okay.
But from the writing perspective, I thought, so one of the two was going to be the path that my career took me down.
Interesting. So what led you to the PR in itself then?
So what happened is those two things, for some reason, I then decided to study journalism and creative writing, hoping that, I'll get a job as a journalist and kind of work my way into whatever, because I convinced myself that I could take that path into becoming a journalist. But then I graduated around the 2008 financial crisis.
Okay.
So what happened then was there was nothing anywhere. And you have to be a bit creative. You have to be a bit creative about how you sort of like, how do I get a job? What do I do from here? So I spoke to a few people and they were like, look for your other options. What else can you do? What other industries? So PR kind of kept coming up as a potential sort of path to go down.
Yeah.
And then I think I got I just kept applying. applied for like internships and stuff, and just kept putting my name in the mix. And I got my first internship how many years ago now, and kind of started from that level, and I'm kind of working my way up slowly but surely to where I am today.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's really interesting. So from TV presenter to really being behind, prepping people for TV. So not that far away.
There you go.
Not that far away. Okay, so that's what kind of attracted you, right?
Yes.
So essentially, I'm going to move a little bit into your lived experience. So one of the questions I always start off with is, when did you become aware of your ethnicity, in the context of living in the UK? So for me, I became more aware of it when I was changing from primary school to secondary school, and I was traveling to secondary school on my own, and I started hearing about the Chelsea Smilers, and they were a racist white group that would go around targeting black and brown, and they would take a razor and literally cut you across your face. That was called the Chelsea Smile. And so I remember being petrified about that. Obviously, I knew as a black woman, a black young girl at that point in time, but it's just one of those ones where it was like, whoa, it was more like, okay, so this is really ridiculous, because I was heading to an area that was kind of notoriously known for like a lot of white thugs. So, it was a bit more like, poignant for me. So what was it for you?
Yeah, for me, I think it was moving to the UK. So like I said, I was born and raised in Nigeria. So for those who may not know, Nigeria has over 200 million people, and like 99+% of those people are black. So growing up in that context, the color of your skin is practically irrelevant.
Yeah.
So that's the context I grew up in. And then when my family, so my parents are economic migrants to the UK, so we migrated a few years ago. So when we migrated to the UK, we moved to like Southeast London, which is quite how do you call it?
I'm from Southeast London. I get it.
Yeah, there you go. So it was then, and I think the sixth form that I went to at the time, I remember, again, I was coming from Nigeria where I was just me and I had my own interests and my own sort of thing. So it was in that context that through the conversations, through the things that were said, through the reactions that you got from some things that happened, people be like, oh, so on one hand, like you get like the kind of microaggressions. On the other hand, you have like sort of other black kids saying, oh, why you do that? You're not black. And it was that kind of weird thing where you then get thrown into the mix where it's like, oh, hang on, what am I?
Yeah.
It's context. And then which is a lot to navigate as a young man, because you're growing up, you're going through, life is complex on its own. But when you then thrown into that mix where you come from a context where your skin color is practically irrelevant, you find yourself in a context where the system is a bit racialized, but then the racialization of the system, then on one hand you have like the typical racial structures, but also when you then go into like whatever minority you fit into, you don't quite fit into that either, because you're not native to that context. So a lot to navigate, but it was in that moment, it was in that sort of experience that I began to sort of understand this whole idea of a racialized kind of identity.
Yeah.
And
Interesting. Really interesting. Particularly, that's very much a cultural shock, isn't it? Because you come from, like you said,
very much.
It's everything. No one cares about that. You come here and you're like, what? People care about this? Like, it's just,
what is this?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got your own black people with colorism and stuff like that, where you've got to navigate.
Even that, that's a, if we have 2 hours, we'll get to the bottom of that. But
yeah. Interesting. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us. So I wanted to ask you about your career journey. So have you ever felt like your race, ethnicity has kind of held you back in your career at any point in time?
So it's one of those things where I think, because for me, in terms of my context, like I'm going that thing I mentioned about growing up in a Nigerian context where my skin color wasn't really something that was considered. I went through the early stages of my career not really paying much attention to that. It was only later on in life that you kind of look back and you kind of ask yourself a question: was the reason why that happened because I was the only black guy in the room? Like, because I'm looking around like no one else have these experiences. Like, okay, everyone's getting promoted like clockwork, and I'm like having to like grind hard or move multiple jobs to get promotions. You have all this kind of very different experiences to everyone, and you're the only difference in many ways, or the most obvious difference, is the fact that I quite often was the only like non-white person in many offices, or at least like the only black guy in most offices, even though I've worked all my career in London.
Yeah.
So you walk out the office, and the office, like the streets are as multicultural as can be, and then you get back in the office, and it's like almost like you go to a different country.
It is. I know. I get it. I can relate to that. I get that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So yeah.
So you feel like, yes. So retrospectively, you can look back and see. Maybe you're not aware of it at the time, but when you look back, sometimes you'd be like, "Oh, well, that."
You can only wonder. You can only wonder because it's like you look at it. Like also the other thing is that sometimes I try to, because in that moment I just the way I dealt with it was I was like, okay, this place is not for me. They're not giving me what I want. I'm going to go on and move on to somewhere else. So it's almost like, yeah, I moved on, and thankfully I'm where I am now. I'm very happy and at peace where I am. So it's like also kind of looking back at those experiences, I do wonder, but I guess I'll never know whether or not. Yeah.
No, I get that. I think because you always have that feeling where it's an inherent thing. I feel like you might feel, but no one's going to come out and say to you blatantly, "Oh, well, Bemi, you didn't get it."
That's true.
It's not going to happen. But when it's kind of inferred, or you get that kind of vibe. So yeah, I get you. I understand that completely.
Yeah.
So going back to the workplace, have you ever experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace? And if so, how was it handled?
Not overtly. We get like undertones of people just looking at you like, and again, it's like I keep going back to this context. Like I grew up in a context where I wasn't a minority in my native context. So the idea of me being a minority or me not belonging because of one thing or another was a very foreign idea to me. So when I got into the workplace, and also moving to the UK and moving to Southeast London, where there are loads of Nigerians, and it's like culturally it's not so distant from where I grew up in. It was a bit of a culture shock when I got into the workplace, where the demographics were very different. The people in the room were very different. A lot of the experiences, a lot of what was normal in those contexts were very different.
Yeah.
So I think in a way, like for me, that made it that kind of complicated a lot of things, because it meant how do you. Because the question is, have I experienced racism in the workplace? And I think when you look, sorry,
or witnessed it,
or witnessed it in the workplace, then you look at it and you're like, yeah, there were incidents where, like I listened to one of the previous podcasts, I think the one with Cam from Calder, and she talked about how you get into when you appear in a situation, the context changes. So everyone is allowed to do XYZ, but then when it becomes your turn, the rules change.
Yes.
And it goes back to this thing again, where no one's ever going to outright come out and say, "Oh, the reason why we're doing this to you is because you're black."
Yeah.
But you know. Exactly. It's one of those things where it's not because of my performance, it's not because of my personality, it's not because of any tangible thing that anyone's ever brought forward and said, "Oh, the reason why this is because of that." But then there's always that undertone, that kind of onset thing, where the same guy who was like a roadblock that was sifting through everything with a fine-tooth comb and about quality and detail, when it comes to my case, when it comes to other people's cases, just waving everything through. It's like,
exactly. Yes, exactly. Sitting there like scratching your head, like, how does this make any sense? I don't understand. I'm very baffled. Yes.
Yeah.
So you are referring to, again, the sort of subtleties that can happen within the workplace.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And so with those sort of subtle kind of experiences or things that you've witnessed, I suppose you would say it wasn't necessarily handled well, because clearly, but it doesn't sound like it was necessarily addressed.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. Because I remember there was a job I did where I actually went up to the MD of the company, the most senior person in the company, and I was like, I feel like I'm being treated different from everyone else.
Good for you.
And I went up to her and I kind of got some kind of kind of, or they're like, nothing happened really.
Yeah.
And nothing like, and I think everyone knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes you, as a someone in my position now, running a company and having to manage different people and manage different things, again, trying to give people the benefit of the doubt sometimes and asking, okay, the reason why this happened, was there something that I just didn't understand that was going on at the time? But to my eyes, I felt like I brought something that was major to your attention and you refused to do anything about it.
Major. That was major.
Yeah, so that's whether or not I've got the wrong end of the stick, I need to leave that interaction feeling like you, as the senior person in that interaction, try to help.
Yeah.
And in many of those cases, people didn't. And now, the reason why I feel like some of those things happen is because also this is like pre-George Floyd and all that kind of stuff that really kind of put a lot of these things to the forefront. A lot of people just, if you're going to be completely honest, like a lot of people just did not understand. Like they're just oblivious and blissfully ignorant to
blissfully ignorant. I'd say blissfully ignorant. Also, sometimes willfully ignorant.
There's willful ignorance there too. There are a lot of people who are willfully ignorant. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people were willfully ignorant. But at the same time, also people in the context, I believe, were just in their own world where there wasn't that awakening in terms of, hang on, Bemi's experience is very different to mine. Why is Bemi's different experience?
Why is that?
Why is Bemi getting more stick than I am? It's not because I'm that much better than him that he's always getting stick. Like, it's all this kind of things where people just blissfully just going about their lives. But like I said, I agree with 100%. There are other people in the context, in the situations where they knew what was going on and they chose to be silent.
Yeah. It's just interesting. Particularly, I think, well done, to say in terms of you going to your MD and saying, look, I feel like I'm being treated different. I think that's very commendable on your behalf, because it takes a lot of guts and bravery to go and do that, because sometimes you wonder, well, what's going to happen? And people are scared to speak up. So I think great for you. And it's a shame that the MD didn't take it on board, but it's brilliant experience. And actually it's great to show that it's important to speak up.
Yeah.
You know, what
you've done your part. You've done your part. Whoever else does their part, that's their own. Well, that's their own problem.
Exactly, but you can at least sleep at night knowing that you've raised the issue. You know, and what they do is down to them and where they take it. But like you said, it would be on that MD to really acknowledge it. And as you've been a leader in your organization, you know how important it is to listen to your staff and acknowledge, what their concerns may be. So I think that's really interesting. So you kind of led on to my next question, because I was going to say, was there a time when you wish you spoke up about something or something? You did.
I did. Unfortunately, not much came out of it, but yeah.
But you did it. At least you did it. It's a shame nothing came out of it. But again, it's something that you did, and I think that's great. And like you said, I think it's interesting also that you talk about George Floyd and that being a key point, or a pivotal point for a lot of people in the industry. But I also think that's a bit of willful ignorance, because we knew about black people getting killed nearly every day. How many times you look on our social media feed and there's something going on? It's a lot. Yeah. But I think it's interesting for the industry, because we had lots of black squares, we had lots of people really.
But even that, but we don't even want to start talking about that.
I know.
The agency, I'm not gonna the agency I was working at the time where this incident happened, they also put up like a black square at that time.
Of course they were.
And it was interesting. It was an interesting.
Look what you're going through, and you're thinking, oh really? Okay.
It was a very interesting thing for me going through that. Maybe they've changed.
Maybe
but
not.
Based on my experience, I was a bit conflicted in terms of seeing that. But at the same time, I'm a big believer in when people show you who they are, or when people grow, you have to give people room to grow. Like, I think one mistake that I don't want to make is shut the door on someone's growth just because they were one way before. If someone shows in a tangible and verifiable way that they've matured and they've grown and they've developed, I think people always deserve a second chance.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree. But I think
if
they've shown, no, that's the point. If they have demonstrated that they actually have made that effort to make a change, I think that's important. But you allude to a good point, because even Cam mentioned that about a lot of companies that would put up black squares, behind the scenes, there's a lot of confusion going on and things going on.
Exactly. Ask the people working in those spaces and ask them what the experiences are, and then you get the real truth.
Exactly that. And then also, where are half the people within their organizations? What levels are they at? These black square organizations. So, and again, that's a whole nother conversation in itself, I'm sure. But so move us a little bit into code switching. So it's something that I think is interesting. So do you think people of color can lead with our kind of authentic voice in the workplace, or will we be forever code switching?
I think code switching is such an interesting thing. I'm a big fan of code switching, by the way, because my code switching, again, because the context I work in, on one end, one day I'm talking to people in America, and the next day I'm talking to people in Nigeria, and I need to code switch to America and I need to code switch to Nigeria.
Right.
So I'm having so for me, sometimes when people talk about code switching, like the code switching goes between, okay, like when you're talking to like corporate to like normal, but then there's like another kind of code switch that happens in the context that we work in that makes it quite interesting. Because for me, if I'm talking to like a Nigerian client, as much as talking like this can help, sometimes I need to be like, hey, my guy, how far? Let's like, and that's what gets the job. That's what gets the job done. That's what gets things moving.
Right.
It creates a sense of camaraderie. Like it just kind of brings people together. We're like, okay, right, we're having a casual conversation, which is what code switching is. I think so. It depends. But going back to the question about will always code switch. I think as long as we live in a country or in a world or as long as we operate in a space where we are not the majority, we will need to adapt, because we will need to find ways to intelligently navigate conversations that we have. And everyone code switches. I don't care what anyone says. Everyone code switches.
I think so.
Everyone does.
Yeah.
They may call it something else in different contexts, but everyone adapts. Being able to adapt and put yourself forward in the most viable and in a way that makes the most sense. I think that's that's a sign of intelligence in a way, and I think everyone does it, and everyone does, and I think everyone should do it. I don't know if I answered the question. I've got it for like a separate.
You answered the question because it's your view on it, so that's your view on it. So no, I appreciate that. So moving on to color bias slightly. So when did you become aware of the color bias in the PR and comms industry itself? Was it once you kind of joined? Because I came from more of an in-house background, so I started to see it more when I started to mingle more with the agencies or go into women in PR, which is mostly agencies, and I was like, wow, it's like a sea of white women here. So it's pretty much like,
Think how you feel. At least you're a woman. I'm the guy.
Yes.
And like I always joke that. So my team at the moment, I'm still the only guy on the team.
Oh, really?
And I always joke with my team that if I had to work at a team full of guys, I wouldn't know what to do, because I've never had to work at a team full of guys. Because it's just not the reality. But the color bias, I think there was an incident that happened in another job where we had a new client and I was leading the account. And we had this new client come in who was coming. There was like a kickoff meeting, and there was this new account exec, like a very inexperienced, new to the job kind of guy. And I remember the guy coming to me before the meeting and was like, Bemi, what do? I don't know what to do in this meeting. And was asking me loads of questions, and I was kind of talking him through, being like, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. Kind of talking him through, kind of getting him ready. Like, look, don't worry, it's fine. Just come in, listen, take notes, and we'll catch up afterwards. We get into the meeting, and this guy looks straight at me. Like, this guy the client gets into the meeting, and he completely just blanked me the whole way through the meeting. And he was turning to the junior, the guy that was asking me how do you like kind of asking him for like advice and guidance on, okay, what do we do? What strategy should we adopt here? And I was like, I'm the one leading this meeting. And there are other incidents with that client later on, which sometimes, again, where I always wonder, how do you work out if people are like willfully like ignorant or it's just like they just don't know? Because a lot of these things I went on to report it and say, hey guys, this thing happened. And again, nothing was done around this incident. Like, nothing was done around because everyone kind of knew, like, okay, like, or there were people in the room when it was happening, and everyone kind of pretended like,
they couldn't see it.
Nothing was said about it afterwards. Where I'm thinking maybe, obviously, hindsight's always 2020. You look back and you're like, oh, if I was in that situation, I would have done something different. But there are all these experiences. But also, again, I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. Everyone happened. You're on your own path, your own journey. You're gonna have these experiences. You're gonna have these challenges. You're gonna have these sorts of uncomfortable situations you're gonna have to navigate. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it depends on what each person chooses to do with those experiences. Like, I could have stayed in those roles when I wasn't getting promoted and sat there, and I'll still be like a very junior member of the staff because I wasn't promoted. But thankfully, I had enough in me to kind of get up and say, "Hey, like, I deserve better than this, and I'm gonna go off somewhere else and get a better opportunity." And when that one didn't work, I kind of went off somewhere else and just kept inching forward, rather than letting other people who consistently showed that they didn't have my best interests, like they were trying to hold me down, kind of thing. So that's my approach, and that's how I believe was one of the things that's contributed to me being where I am today. Just
yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think that's good. I appreciate the example too of the color bias, because I've heard of examples like that of being in rooms with clients, and the client you're the lead, as a person of color is lead. And they just they go to the white person, and they just like, and you don't realize that you're the lead, and then you make it known that you're the lead, and they still continue. So, if you raise it with the agency staff, I personally think sometimes it doesn't get addressed because everyone's thinking about the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So the priority is just everyone just looks at it differently. But again, I think also the thing to bear in mind now, again, maybe I'm trying to give too much of a benefit of the doubt, but I feel like post George Floyd and all of that, I think a lot of those things are now more in people's consciousness, where when you engage with younger team members who are newer to the industry and they have similar experiences, most times they tell you the way these things are dealt with are quite different from how it may have been dealt with a long time ago, which is fantastic, and that's good progress, which is what we want to see. Because you don't want, if you're the leader and you've been appointed as the leader by your agency, if you go into a meeting and you're not being treated as such, you want your agency to back you up.
Absolutely, you do.
Not just leave you out there to dry. Now, if you're not the leader, you're pretending to the leader, you get ignored, then that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
A very different conversation. But if and that kind of thing. But we're inching forward. There's still a lot more progress to be made, but we're slowly but surely inching forward on a lot of these issues that people like yourself and myself might have experienced sort of throughout our careers. But and hopefully the younger generation of Black and other ethnic minority people coming up in the UK don't have to experience, so at least not as frequently or as badly as we may have experienced it in our time.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that.
This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
So thanks for that, Bemi. So what are your thoughts then on allyship, and what does that mean for you? Like, what to you is a good example of allyship?
Oh, I think allyship is very important because I think, again, I keep going back to context. There's like a majority group of people in the workplace. So in PR, for example, it's white people. PR is a 92, like the census show, like 92% of people in PR are white. And then, which means if the 8% are going to make any progress, they're more likely to make progress if they have people out of the 92% that are ready to help them, because there's no way 8% is going to beat 92% or going to penetrate 92%. So, and also if you look through history in different contexts where people have made progress in any way, name good, bad, when a handful of people want to conquer like a lot of people, or when a handful of people want to penetrate like a certain context, they always need people from within that majority to provide inroads or to come and show them that, look, if you want to get in here, this is how you get in here and this is how you stay in here. kind of thing. I think that's the role of allies. And I think that's very important. In terms of if we are to make progress, if we are to get to a situation where a lot of these issues and challenges that we are facing now no longer exist, then we need to form partnerships and people. Because I believe I've worked long enough. I know we'll talk about horrible experiences, but I've also worked with some wonderful people who have been very gracious, very good people in every sense of the word. So it's like, yes, we want to make sure we call out the bad eggs and stuff, but also I think it's important to be aware when we see good people. Because I'll go back to there's a line manager that I had in a role that I randomly stumbled on a reference letter he wrote for. He wanted me to get a promotion and a pay rise. And it was a long, glowing letter. He was like, Bemi is this, Bemi is that, Bemi is that, Bemi is that, bam, 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 Bemi deserves a pay rise. I didn't get a pay rise or a promotion in the end, but he
was your ally, definitely.
It wasn't because he didn't try. It wasn't because he didn't believe. The decision was stopped by other people in the decision chain. So for someone like him, and I remember I when I saw that that letter, I messaged him straight away. And I was like, I did not appreciate what this means, what this meant at the time. But thank you for being an ally. I use those words, thank you for being an ally, because that meant a lot. Because at that time I was so angry that I felt like I deserved a promotion, I deserved a pay rise, and I didn't get it. That when the dust settled, I was like, I'm off, I'm out of here. And I kind of went off. I didn't really look back. I was looking for something else in my emails. When I realized that I'd sent that email to myself, to my personal email, and I kind of saw that where that's how all of that happened. So so I think allyship is very important, and I think because if we're going to make progress, like I said, we will need people who are in the majority to help, and it's as simple as that. They'll need to offer their help and offer their support in terms of stuff. So when we find people, again, it goes back to this thing: when people show themselves to be trustworthy and honest and good people in ways that we can actually measure and verify, then I think there's also a need for us to then open up and accept them and be like, hey, this guy's actually the good guys. Okay, the bad people, let's run away from them.
Yes.
Someone shows in a very tangible and measurable way that they're actually good and they mean well, and they show it consistently, that they're not just doing it because of clout or because, this is what the popular thing to do now, then there should also be like an incentive to be like, hey, come through, let's do this together, kind of thing. So that's I'm a big fan of allies. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's very much needed.
Definitely agree with you on that, absolutely. And that's a good example of an ally that you just spoke about, the reference that he didn't have to do that, but he did that, and I think that's really good, really supportive. So maybe a bit more into you in particular. So what motivates you or inspires you to keep going?
A lot of things. Again, so Talking Drum we focus on innovation in Africa. So for me, a big motivation is my children. So like I said, I grew up in Nigeria, and I was blissfully unaware of a lot of the wider global context about what Africa was. It was until I moved here and so I heard people saying different things like, hang on, that wasn't my experience. I didn't grow up on a tree. I didn't grow up in poverty. I didn't grow up in any kind of lack. But because you grow up in Africa, you come to the UK, everyone kind of assumes that that's the single story of the African experience. So for me, my dream is I want when my daughter and I have two children, when my children are old enough and they choose to go and live wherever they want to live in the world, when they open their mouth and they say, I am Nigerian, I'm African, whatever, that the conversation people want to have with them is not about poverty and donating £1 a week or whatever, that people want to have conversations about African innovation, African entrepreneurship, African art, African culture, African music, all these wonderful things that we've given to the world. So for me, my thing is, I'm fortunate to have the skills and the abilities to do what I do. So for me, if we succeed in doing what we're trying to do in terms of making innovation a central narrative when it comes to Africa, then that thing I want to achieve, that when my children go across the world, whatever they choose to go across the world, like that's going to be the norm. So for me, in a way, when I have like my bad weeks and things aren't going so well, like for me, I kind of go back to that. Like, why are you actually doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you actually doing this? Like, okay, it's good. You want to have a big client and do that, the big work, and it's fantastic. That's great. But ultimately, that's not the, and also for me, it's like, then something like that, which is again one of the reasons that kind of drove me to do this. Like, I can't outsource that to someone else. I need to take ownership of that. That's my dream. That's my ambition that I want for my children.
Yeah.
So I can't then like concede that responsibility to someone else to drive that. It's like,
no,
I have to do that myself.
No, I understand that, and I think that's commendable, and it makes sense because you're right. The narrative about Africa is much getting better now, but at one point
we're making progress.
Yes, definitely making some progress. I feel like we are definitely making some progress. So, along your journey, what would you say you found the most challenging so far?
Which journey? On the career journey?
Career journey.
My career journey. What I found most challenging so far? I'll just say navigating the politics of the workplace. Because like naturally, I just want to get on with the work. So in the early days, I was just blissfully unaware. I was of this opinion that my work will speak for me, and as long as I work hard and I'm good at it, then everything will be fine. So when I was having those struggles in the beginning, when I wasn't getting the promotion and the pay rises and all those kind of things, my reaction was, I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to get better. I'm going to work harder, get better, work harder, get better, work harder, get better, work. And I kept kind of like just going into myself. And then up to a point, I just realized that, hang on, like there are some structural roadblocks and there's some people in some cases that were like committed to not letting me get through. So it wasn't about how these guys went, like, they weren't going to wake up one morning and be like, oh, Bemi's fantastic. Let's let's give him everything he wants. Like, that was never going to happen. And I think coming to that realization was a tough realization, because I think through life up to that point, you work hard, you get your results, and you kind of go from there. But you realize that there's certain things, and also it's having this thing of just knowing, like, I deserve better and I deserve good things in life. So if I'm not getting good things where I am, and if it's not, if I'll try and change it, if it's something that's beyond my control, I know that, okay, I'm just gonna pack my things and go somewhere else where I'm gonna get good things.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's a key point. And what's interesting in what you said is the whole working harder, and that's something that as Black people we're taught, right? Work hard, and for Black people we have to work 3-4 times harder.
That thing. Oh, I told myself again. And this is why I told myself that's not going to be me. That working twice as hard to get half as far. Like, I'm like, that's not going to be me.
No, let's work smarter.
I want the opposite.
Yeah, I say let's work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also why I'm a big believer in ownership in a way, because I think ownership then gives us the context to be like, okay, like I'm the founder and managing director of my own company. Mm-hmm. I'm working to create a space where people get what they deserve.
Yeah.
People get what they deserve, and there's no like, I would hate for any of my employees to be like, oh, they've had to work twice as hard to get half as far as anyone else on the team. Like, that would really break me, because like I know what that feels like to be on the receiving end of that. So for me to be kind of having kind of Stockholm syndrome, reworking the trauma of what I've been through on other people, that will really hurt me in many ways. So for me, there's also then like an intentionality about trying to build a work environment that rewards. I want to reward people appropriately, so that almost like we break that cycle, and you then from then on create like a good chain of events in terms of, okay, so this doesn't have to be the way things run. So how do we stop that cycle and start a cycle of good behavior where things happen the right way? And again, it's one of those things where you have to, I believe, like, if I wanted that bad, I need to own it and I need to run it.
Yeah.
Which again, that's another conversation for another time.
No, but that's interesting. No, thank you. And putting your kind of employee hat on, and also has your an employer in itself. Going back to when you were working in-house or in agency, right? What is it you'd want from your employer, and what you would makes a good working environment?
Ooh. So what I want from an employer, again, look like just a place where I could come and work hard, but know that my hard work will be rewarded.
Yeah.
And also I want a place where I can be myself as much as I want to be.
Yeah.
So not feeling like I have to be some kind of version of like, okay, there's this A-type person that we employ here, and I have to be like a version of that person to kind of get in progress. I want to be as much of myself as I feel comfortable being. So some days I get a haircut. Sometimes I don't get a haircut. Sometimes I'm very friendly. Sometimes I'm not very friendly. Sometimes I don't go out for drinks. Sometimes I don't want to go out for drinks. Sometimes I want to have a chat. Sometimes I don't want to have a chat. Whatever version of myself works best for me in that context, as long as I'm delivering on my responsibilities that I've signed up for. Then but for me, what the environments where I feel like I thrived when I was working were the environments where I was, I felt like my work was being rewarded,
right,
like appropriately.
Yeah.
So, because again, that's the thing. I go there to work, and also you kind of realize later on in life. This is why I talk about being myself as I want to be, because ultimately you go to work to work.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, you work and you get paid.
Yeah.
So as long as I feel like I'm getting rewarded for the work I'm doing, then all the other things I can manage effectively. But as in my previous life as an employee, yeah, like those were the environments where I thrived the most, where I felt like, okay, like I'm getting what I deserve. Yeah. And there's like a clear path where I feel like, okay, I buy into what they're doing here, and my contribution to that vision is like, it makes sense.
Makes sense. Yes. Absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's really important. The environment is, conducive to actually for an environment that you can thrive, but also are rewarded. And I think that's very, very important. Yeah. So again, around the kind of equity issue. So there's a lot of talk about, diversity, DEI, whichever way you flip it, EDI, however they flip it these days. So you've got diversity, equity, inclusion. What does that mean for you? What does that look like to you?
I think it's very important. I have two opinions on this topic. Actually, it's something I've spent some time thinking of. Again, going back to the context of us working we live in the UK. We live in a country that's majority white.
Yes.
So if we go with the flow and we go with the norm, we're just going to have majority white spaces where people who are not white would be excluded for one reason or another, and we don't want that. We want people with talents. The ideal is for people who have talents to have the opportunity to showcase their talent and to be rewarded effectively. Right. So that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion comes in. I think that there's a very important role. The diversity, equity, and inclusion plays a very important role in workplaces. But at the same time, I think that the other thing I think can or should be added to that is ownership.
Yeah.
So I believe sometimes with diversity and inclusion, what ends up happening is we end up sort of kind of asking for space or jostling for space and negotiating space, and okay, can you give us this? Or we need the workplace to be a bit more of that, and you need this and that, which again, very necessary and very important.
Yeah.
But ownership gives you a level of control that you then call the shots. You create that space, because you can then take responsibility of saying, okay, this is what I want my workplace to look like. This is what I want my team to look like. And having that level of ownership where it's yours. You're not asking anyone's permission to run it. You're not asking anyone's permission to do it one way or another. You're doing it that way because that's what you believe works for you. And I think that's another conversation that I think is important for us to start having in terms of ownership, because then we can then start creating spaces that work for us.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not we want to replicate, because again, if you look at it in context, if someone who has no context, who has no interaction with Black people, let's say they've grown up in some part of the UK that's even like more like less diverse and they have no exposure, you can't then expect them, because they've lived in London for 5 years, to be able to create like a diverse environment in the same way someone that's like, the point I'm getting at is people create workspaces that resemble their experiences and their lives and their priorities.
Yeah.
So if we want to create more spaces that resemble our priorities and kind of work for us, then I think there's a conversation to be had there about us taking ownership of those be like, okay, right, more PR agencies, more creative agencies, more magazines, more blogs, more spaces where we're creating it because that is what we want to do and that's how we want to do it. So no one can then come in and be like, oh, you need to do it differently. Like, no, this is what I want to do. And this is working. We're delivering results. We're doing very well. And kind of running from there. So I think, yeah, so DEI is very, very important, very, very essential. And more work needs to be done on that front. But alongside that, yeah, ownership.
No, I get you. That's why I created this podcast special. You know, because essentially I wanted a space for, do you know what I mean, people of color, and maybe we can come and share stories. Yeah. So I realized that actually I'm going to have to create that space myself.
There you go. You know, and so, here we are now, see?
Exactly. Here we are talking. Exactly that. So no, I get you with that. But I also have, on the flip side of that, there's a slight frustration, which is, you know, where it feels like everything that's DEI focused lays on a person of color's lap. And that is a bit like, oh, for goodness sake.
That's who. Yeah. That's who. Like I made a thing of I've stopped responding to like, so anytime you get and so that, or what are your thoughts on this kind of racial discrimination thing, so kind of DAI, and also like it makes sense if you're the only black person in the room and there's like something around racial discrimination, like, but I'm like I'm not a DEI expert, I'm a PR guy.
Yeah.
If you want to ask me about PR, if you want to ask me what my client does, I can tell you about that. But when it comes to DEI, I am not your guy because that's not my field. I've not been trained in it. I have many lived experiences I can talk you through. But in terms of giving you like an informed opinion, like an educated opinion, then I may not be the best guy. Maybe someone else. There may be someone else. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, avoid all of that. I don't go anywhere near it.
I think it's difficult for people because you've got those who care, who, not saying you don't care about it, but you've got those who might be like, oh yeah, fine. I do want to get involved. And you've got others who are like,
fine.
Because I'm the black person doesn't mean I want to be involved. And I think that's equally fine. You know,
exactly.
And that's
you need to have those choices.
Yeah, no, it's about choice, isn't it? So I think that's an important part to kind of hit home, because I do feel like a lot of the cases of a lot of big corps and a lot of organizations, even I've been on a board before, and myself and the other person of color were asked, what were we doing to improve diversity for the board? So it was like, excuse me, that's not my role. And I said that I was very much, as far as I'm concerned, I was pointing to this board because of my skill set, not because I'm sort of the Piper of people of color. You know, so like, do you know what I mean? So it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
And I think also that there should be, I think also because, and I get it, it's almost like this Black History Month, and I've struggled with Black History Month for a very long time, but I've made peace with it now. And I think I'm more comfortable with it, because in the beginning I was like, what the hell is Black History Month? Like, there's no White History Month, there's no other history month, whatever. But then I spoke to someone and he says, sometimes it's in the context of these sorts of very narrow conversations that a lot of people get the opportunity to showcase what they can do. So if you find yourself so some people, because that's what they want for themselves, when they find themselves in a board situation like you find yourself in, for them, it's like, this is my moment to show them that I can actually offer advice and strategic leadership and all this kind of stuff. So they kind of grab it and run with it. So in a way, it's like, as much as I'm not necessarily for it and I won't be sort of banging my pan and going this, that, and that, I've also come to appreciate the value of it in the sense that it serves that purpose where many people have used the context of situations to create a pathway for themselves that's helped them further their careers, and well done to them for that. And more grace to them, more grace to elbow for that. So you can't, again, some of these things are quite nuanced and complex sometimes, where we will need to sort of keep having these conversations to make sure, okay, how have the goalposts shifted? Where are we now?
Yeah.
Have we made any progress since the last time we had this conversation? Or are we still where we used to be? And then from there, we then kind of reset from there rather than completely ignoring it or completely embracing it forever kind of thing. Like, well, at least that's my current position on the matter.
I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move a little bit into a bit more about you, of course, and your proudest moments. So can you tell us about your proudest moment? So it could be work, it can be personal, and what has been a career highlight for you?
I'll wrap both into one. I'll say just where we are with Talking Drum.
Okay.
Just because Talking Drum, it was never the plan. The plan was never to run my own company. It was just something that, like, I was talking to a good friend of mine who just looked me dead in the eye and was like someone I really trust and value his opinion and his advice. He just looked me dead in the eye and was like, bro, you need to go and do this. And you need to go and do this. And he kind of looked me dead in the eye and said, you just go and do this. And I was like, I kind of dilly-dally, kind of sat on it, kind of thought about it, prayed about it, spoke to my wife about it for like a few months. And then it was like, yeah, you know what? Why not? Let's have a go. If it works, all good. If it doesn't work, we'll learn and we'll go again. Like, and also I was reading a book at the time that I was talking about failure and why you shouldn't be afraid of failure and stuff. So everything kind of happened around the same time where I kind of just got this thing of, okay, I can't fail because if I don't get it right, I'll just do it again.
Yeah, it's not failure. It's lessons. It's all lessons. I don't look at it.
Exactly. There you go. So and then to start from there to where we are now, we're working with some of the most innovative companies doing excellent and exciting things across the continent. We are actively contributing to the new innovation narrative that's becoming more and more synonymous with Africa. We are playing a very important role. We are delivering excellent results. We're doing so many wonderful things that sometimes I go through some of the things that our clients do and I kind of pinch myself like, wow, okay, we are actually helping them deliver these things. And we're doing these things. We deliver a lot of excellent results for them across the board. So when I look at that, I'm like, yeah, and we're only like 2 years old.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so like 2 years old. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, we've done well. Still a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of structure and process and things to put in place. There's still more. We sound like dream clients that we want to work with. We have things in the future that we want to like get done. But in terms of where we started to where we are now, very proud of myself, proud of my team, proud of our clients and the work they're doing, and hopefully more wins to come.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. And congratulations to you for your 2 years. Amazing.
Thank you very much.
So back to the industry in terms of where you think it's going to evolve to. So what are your thoughts on how the industry will evolve over the next few years? I think it's interesting because AI and things like that, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, look at ChatGPT already.
Oh, so I'll tackle that question in two ends. First, from a process thing in terms of how the industry works, it's almost like, where do you want to start? So you can look at the impact of AI and ChatGPT. Who knows what technology is going to be invented tomorrow? Like 10 years ago, a lot of the technologies we're using. I remember when I first started in PR, that the internet wasn't really a thing. The internet wasn't really a thing. And now you can't even talk about PR without, so it's like kind of exposing my age a little bit.
Absolutely.
So now there's also the flip of who knows what's going to come in the future. So I think there's going to be so much change. I think that the fundamentals are going to stay the same, because I think the fundamentals have always been the same in terms of good best practices, good messaging, target-driven stuff, like good measurement, all this kind of stuff. Those fundamentals are going to stay the same. We're not gonna. I don't foresee too many things changing on that front. One or two things may be added, but in terms of like the core of how PR works, the core itself, I don't think that's going to change that much. In terms of the industry, in terms of the people, and the way the landscape looks, I also think that's going to change too. The reason why I say that is because a lot of work has gone on in the last few years. So there have been people like yourself and myself have gone to many spaces. There are many other people in these spaces. So like now, I'm seeing more and more Black people, like Asian people in senior comms roles, more than when I was working, and it's getting more and more normal now. So having those voices and those people in a conversation and a context means what they bring to the table and how they look at experiences. And even when it comes to things like recruitment, for example, when you're interviewing, and if I'm a decision maker in the interviewing process and I see someone that reminds me of myself for whatever reason, I'm very likely to favor them because there's a kinship there.
Yeah.
So I think for that in that sense, and also as people rise through the top, as people rise to the top of the industry, people running agencies, successful agencies, people getting to the top and having senior roles, other people look and be like, oh, hang on, yeah, that person looks at me and is working that career that looks very exciting. I want to have a go.
Yes.
Rather than before, where the only thing that drove you to have a go was because you were just naturally ambitious, not because you saw a reflection of yourself. And we all know the more you see yourself in something, the more you're attracted to it. So, yeah. So I think on those two fronts, like I think
we'll see
in 5 to 10 years from now, we'll maybe looking at a very, very different landscape on many fronts when it comes to PR.
Interesting. Thank you for that. So I wanted to ask you, what are the key lessons you've learned throughout your career? So if you had, like, say, 5 key lessons.
Ooh, can I get to 5?
Oh, 3. Whatever's easiest.
I'll tell you the main one that I like to tell people. There's no substitute for competence.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
There's no substitute for competence. Because I believe, yes, there's discrimination. People get discriminated against. But when you get the opportunity, you need to deliver. You need to deliver and do a good job. It's as simple as that. Like, you can't. What weakens the conversation, what weakens the argument about discrimination is when someone claims to be having discriminated against, but when you actually look at the quality of their work, it's actually not that good.
Yeah.
So you have to be good. You have to deliver good work. Otherwise, you're weakening your own argument.
Yeah.
When it comes to everything else. The other thing is, it's one of my favorite saying is, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So you can have all the talent in the world, you can have all the talent in the world and all the whatever, but if you don't work hard and you don't roll up your sleeves and get to it, the person that has less talent than you is working harder will get further than you will. It's just as simple as that. My whole life is like a case study of that statement.
Yeah. I think those are 2 big lessons, though.
Yeah. So kind of, but it's all about hard work. There's no substitute for hard work, man. Like, you have to work hard if you want to get somewhere. If you want to achieve something worth talking about, you need to work. You need to work very, very hard. You're going to have obstacles, especially in this context that we work in. There's going to be a lot of nonsense that you're going to have to navigate. But it will be much easier for you to navigate those issues with hard work than if you just let the thing knock you over.
No, thank you. So I want to ask you, what advice would you give to young people of color considering entering the industry at the moment?
Oh, I think go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. And go there. Like, this thing of take up space. Like, don't go there and feel like, oh, I don't belong here. Even if you're the only person of color in the room, just go there and believe you belong there.
Yeah.
I think sometimes half of the battle is actually believing you belong. Because I think once you believe you belong, it becomes much easier for you to navigate the whole conversation and everything else that comes with it. So just go in there, believe you belong. Again, going back to the thing about competence, make sure you develop your skills.
Yeah.
Competent and be good at your job. But also have that confidence to, like, go in there and be like, because that confidence then gives you confidence, right? So when you're competent, you know you're good at your job, you can then go in and say, this thing that needs to be done, I can do, and I can do it very well.
Exactly.
Don't beat yourself, be like, I'm the best at doing this thing. Like, don't be afraid to be confident and to beat your chest and say, this is who I am, and I'm that guy, I'm that girl. Like, this just go in there, because I think you don't want to one thing, again, look at myself in my context as an employer, one thing I hate seeing in people is like timidity or shyness. Like shyness is the one quality that won't get you anywhere because people just ignore you and go to the next person. So so if you want to take stuff on, you have to go for it. Now, it doesn't mean you always get it right. Sometimes you make mistakes. You have to be humble enough to like learn and accept correction. But also start off being confident and let the world kind of bring you down if it needs to. But don't start from low because the world's going to bring you down anyway. So you better off starting quite high. So if it knocks you down, it knocks you to like, it's almost like an aim for the stars, land on the moon kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, go for it. Anyone who's thinking of it, go for it. There's like, also because there hasn't been many people of us. It's been very sort of homogenous, like industry for a very long time. When we come in here with expertise and with experience and our competence, and we find the right spaces, we can add a lot of value to many of these spaces where we can actually do a lot of excellent work that if we were not there, some of these things wouldn't be done. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. And into the last section of question where I talk to you about mindset. So how do you deal with the internal mind war? Or how do you deal with managing, self-limiting beliefs?
It's a constant struggle. There's two things. So first, I like to surround myself with people that like know where I'm trying to go and believe I can get there. And when I'm having those kind of internal moments where I'm feeling like, oh, I don't feel great or wonderful, I kind of reach out to these people and they kind of like get back to where you used to be, like kind of yank me back in place. Like, okay, like get back on it. Because everyone's human, right? No one's a superhero. No one's like invaluable. Like we all go through moments of mental weakness. But I'm a very big believer in having the right people around you, so that in the same way when people around me are going through tough times, I can also support them and kind of bring them back and give them focus, and we can have honest conversations. I'm a very big believer in honest conversations. Let's have honest conversations. Let's support each other. Let's push each other forward.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing because if you leave yourself to deal with these things by yourself, it can be too easy, especially as a guy as well. It can be too easy for you to sink into this sort of low-key depression where you're like kind of sulking on yourself, like, oh, why is everything so bad? Where sometimes all you just need is an encourager, someone that can come around, like put their arm around you and be like, okay, you may have made this mistake here, but you've got this and you can go, like, let's go again, let's run. Like someone can fire you up, someone that knows how to push your buttons in terms of this is what this person needs to hear at this time to kind of like turn them up again, and have those people around you and make sure you hold them tight because they will make a big difference in your life where you need them.
No, that's good. That's a really good one, actually. I think that's a useful tip for a lot of people. So looking back on your journey, would you do it all over again?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, brilliant. I love it when I get that answer. I'm like, yeah,
100%. I'll take the same path too. Maybe one or two things missed out. Maybe one or two things. I'll jump a couple of things, but in terms of where I started, where I am.
Yeah, you would definitely do it. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. And then my second to last question is, what's the best and worst advice you've been given?
Oh, the best advice is don't lie. I made a big mistake in one of my early jobs of lying on my CVs. And I told someone about it and he looked at me dead in the face and it's like, don't you ever do that again.
Okay.
You say you put your best foot forward, but it's still your foot. You don't lie or make stuff up. And be honest, because that honesty then means if anyone challenges you on it, you can, it's like, yes, it's the truth. I don't have to like worry about making stuff up. Also, in terms of competence, yes, you want to big up your own competence and make yourself look good, but you do yourself no favors by saying you can do something you can't. So if you can't do it, like either go and learn how to or just be honest that you can't.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So worst advice? I'm trying to think. I hope I'm not making this up, but something about PR is not for black people or something like that. It's like,
wow.
No, it's
definitely
like,
definitely the worst advice you've heard. I agree with that.
It's like again, it's like one of those things where you kind of look at it as like, yeah, again, another conversation for another time. It's only thing where you kind of look at it as like, oh, that's not. Almost like you should go and do something different. Like this is not for us. That go and do something different because, and I get sometimes some of these things come from people who actually mean well.
They do mean well, but yeah,
people mean well, but they just
I get it, but it's just a case of well, no, because we still are in these spaces.
Exactly. No, not now.
Yeah, got people black people who own publications, podcasts. There's things we definitely should be in the space. So I agree that was definitely a worst advice you've given. Definitely. The final question I have for you is: do you have any rules that you've implemented to help you along your career journey?
Rules. Oh, where do I start? I think it's a combination of some of the things I mentioned before, like the thing about hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is more of like a guiding principle that kind of sort of underpins a lot of my thinking in terms of how do you how do you do this thing and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very big thing. I'm a big fan of like sayings and proverbs, especially the ones that mean something and actually are tangible. Like another saying I like that kind of informs my thinking is like impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion.
Yeah, I like.
So in a way, it may not be a rule as such, but in terms of how. So if I look at a situation and it looks impossible, like for me, it's then like it's only impossible because someone's never done it before. It doesn't necessarily mean it can't be done.
Yes.
So for me, then giving it like, okay, and this is not going to be the first time people have said something is impossible. There was a time when people said, oh, it's impossible to run 100 meters in under 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. Now, like 14-year-olds are doing it in like secondary schools, like all over the place. Like, is that kind of thing, that kind of thinking, like, okay, it may look ridiculously like insurmountable. It could look like a bit wild, but it's possible. You just have to figure out how to do it unpick it, break it down. Also, when things get complex, breaking it down to like small chunks. So rather than looking at one big complex thing, you kind of look at it as smaller, more digestible issues. So try and break it down to as many small pieces as possible. And once you then figure out however many small pieces you have, it then makes it easier for you to put the whole together as figured out things rather than one big cloud of uncertainty. Yeah. So those kind of things where when my head is not in the fog and I'm able to kind of catch myself, I'll be like, right, let's break this thing down to as many parts as possible. What are the components of these situations that we are navigating? How do we understand each element? How do we make sure that, okay, we get it? And then in getting it, you then go on to kind of, how do you say it? You then go to like explain, like understand how to fix it and how to address and how to navigate those kind of situations.
Right. Yeah, no,
I don't know if that answers the question. It's not exactly.
I think that's interesting what you said about I agree with you in terms of the, like me, I kind of like proverbs and quotes and things like that. I think those are really helpful. But the ones you've mentioned are good. Impossible is very, very good point because nothing to me is insurmountable. You can get through things, and like you said, it's just about your approach, your strategy. But also, what you have alluded to throughout our whole chat is something that actually I kind of used to attest to in terms of a rule, and I feel like you've got the same rule, which was essentially that if you weren't get promoted within, you move out. You keep yourself pushing, keep it pushing. No matter what, don't just stay in one spot and be unhappy. Essentially, take yourself out and keep driving forward. And I feel like I've got that from you.
It's a slightly different thing now as an employer because obviously you don't want people to just keep hopping because you want them to stay. But again, it goes back to that thing where for me is like creating an environment where people feel like if I work hard and I show myself, I'll get the opportunity. So is that kind of thing. But that's a topic for another podcast. Hop, and then landed where I am.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bemi.
Thank you
for sharing your experience with us. We've really enjoyed having you on here. And if people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
A good place is, so we've got a website. So we are talkingdrum.com without the S. So talkingdrum.com on all social medias. A website, talkingdrum comes with an S.com. And yeah, just search for my name. So Bemi Idowu, or my full name, Bemi Idowu. That I'm sure will be in the caption. Just look for that. And then, yeah, you can find me. And yeah, happy to have a chat. Happy to be in touch as people need.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've had a really good time.
Oh, no, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So everybody that's listening, I've been talking with Bemi Idowu. He is the founder of Talking Drum Communications. So like he said, contact him online. Don't forget to look him up on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, Bemi. We really appreciate it. You guys, please stay tuned because I will be back with some more wonderful people from the world of comms. Thanks so much for listening.